Good evening. You're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. On the show tonight, a horrific tragedy on the eve of Independence Day as an explosion rocks in Indian submarines with 15 sailors and 3 officers feared dead. We'll bring you all the details on that big story in just a moment. Also tonight, the Indian Parliament passes a counter-resolution to Pakistan, strongly rejecting Islamabad's charge of unprovoked aggression and strongly reiterates that Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India. This happens at a time when ceasefire violations are increasing on the line of control. The question is the ceasefire and the peace process itself in danger? That debate will take place in just a few minutes. But first tonight, in a midnight tragedy, 15 sailors and 3 officers are feared dead today after explosions hit the Indian Navy's Sindhurakshak submarine last night in Mumbai. The submarine has now sunk. The Defence Minister and Navy Chief rushed to Mumbai this afternoon, where the Chief said they just didn't know what had happened. Though he didn't rule out sabotage, he seemed to suggest it was highly unlikely.
A catastrophic tragedy on the eve of Independence Day. Explosions, massive balls of fire ripping through the silence post-midnight in Mumbai. INS Sindhurakshak, one of India's most advanced non-nuclear submarines, had caught fire at the naval dockyard in South Mumbai. Fully armed, the torpedoes or missiles in the weapons bay located in the front of the submarine had exploded.
What we are told is that 16 fire tenders were rushed to the spot and the incident took place post-midnight.
But by then, Sindhurakshak had almost sunk.
One sub which was totally involved into fire, and the second one was which was just berthed around 10 to 15 feet away, was partially on a fire.
But there was no news of the 18 Navy personnel on board.
Now the divers, as we speak, are in the waters of the Arabian Sea, trying to locate them, trying to touch base with them, but they face certain difficulties. They were not able to open the hatches because they were jammed. Also because the submarine was, because of the fire, it was burning, and that's the reason why it was very hot for them to open the hatches.
The only good news, 3 crew members who were on top of the sub escaped with minor injuries.
While we hope for the best, at the same time we also have to prepare for the worst. The current state is that our diving teams have been able to open the main hatch on the conning tower. That is the only access into the boat currently. From there the divers are going inside and they will attempt to create 3 or if possible 2 watertight compartments within the boat. With that, we will commence our dewatering and pumping out activities.
I express my heartfelt condolences to the families of those sailors who are inside this submarine.
The explosion on board INS Sindhurakshak, hours before it was supposed to go into the sea for an operation, will severely affect the Indian Navy's underwater combat capability. But perhaps what is even more worrisome is the fact that this accident happened just 3 months after the ship went through a midlife upgrade and was completely refurbished.
One of India's worst naval disasters, Sindhurakshak, has sunk, but the Navy believes it is still salvageable. But with no official word on the 18 men trapped inside, the lives of their loved ones shattered and now in limbo. Bureau Report, NDTV.
Well, joining us here in the studio is former Rear Admiral Raja Menon. Also, we have Commander GKK Nair joining us tonight from Mumbai to make sense of what has happened. So, many people are flabbergasted today because this ship was overhauled only some 6 or 7 months ago. In your assessment, is this something that completely took you by surprise? Should this have happened?
Yeah, it's taken me completely by surprise. I mean, any disaster of this magnitude, there is something very poignant about the loss of a submarine. And I think this has got national and, if necessary, even international repercussions.
In what way?
I don't think the submarine was lost because of any malfunction. But there's obviously been a series of incidents which have culminated in this particular tragedy.
What would you say those would be?
Well, it looks, I haven't seen any definite analysis coming out from the Navy as yet, and I can understand that the Navy is reticent to say anything while the board of inquiry has just been convened. But if I had to take a call, I would say that from the kind of explosion that was portrayed, there definitely were two distinct explosions, and the second explosion where the light was much brighter and of a white light indicated that something which was incandescent and combustible had exploded. So I would suspect that there may have been a battery explosion, but battery explosions don't create tragedies of this magnitude.
Well, for that I suppose we'll have to wait and see
Yes.
what the inquiry says. But Commander Nair, how much of a setback is this for the Indian Navy? It's of course a human tragedy on one hand, because we fear that there are 15 sailors and 3 officers who may have died. On the other hand, as Rear Admiral Raja Menon was saying, this is something that has huge repercussions for India and for the Indian Navy.
Yes, obviously, because first of all, it absolutely depletes the fighting capability of the arm, and like we all know, the force levels of submarines have depleted, and there have been a cry for induction of new submarines. And Sindhurakshak was a recently refitted submarine and a frontline submarine for India, and the loss of such a platform is certainly a grave loss. On the other hand, a tragedy of this nature certainly sends a lot of fear, and it affects the morale of the submariners, the men at large. And to me, that is one of the prime tasks that the the Naval Higher Management has in their hand to resurrect the morale of the men.
And in fact, talking about the submariners, they're a very small group. They are highly trained. It's almost like a family. It's a community. Isn't that, as Commander Nair says, really going to be the big challenge then?
Yes, it is.
It's a big loss.
Yeah, it is a very close-knit community, and there is enormous camaraderie among the submariners. But as he quite rightly said, the first task is to reinforce the confidence of the men in the material that they have got to fight with. So that should be the first task, and to make them feel that they have basically a good submarine and that this was an accident.
There was Commander Nair, on the same submarine in 2010, there was a hydrogen leak that had taken place, which had resulted in the death of 1 sailor. What does that tell you about maybe perhaps the maintenance of the submarine? What does it tell you at all, if there is a link you see?
Well, in my professional view, battery explosion cannot cause this sort of a catastrophe. The Navy in the past had a few incidents of battery explosion, and in all these cases the battery explosion has been highly contained within the submarine pressure hull, which is, as you know, is a very strong steel body. But to have an explosion of the nature which sort of compromised the watertight integrity of the submarine has to be of a very high magnitude.